Representative Adam Smith, a Democrat out of Washington State on the Select Intelligence Committee, recently returned yourself, representative from Pakistan and Afghanistan. How do you look at the process of investigating this in terms of deference to FBI, MP, and Fort Hood investigators and the role of an Intelligence Committee investigation, either simultaneous to that, or would you hold off as the president suggests, or are you inclined to go with your Republican colleagues on the committee?
Well, clearly this needs to be investigated, and I don't think we can wait. And certainly the military needs to investigate it. The administration needs to investigate it. I think the best source to do that would be the Department of Defense in cooperation with our intelligence community, with Admiral Blair and others, to look into this as quickly as possible to figure out what happened in Hassan's case, and also to figure out whether or not there are other potential problems out there. But having a whole lot of congressional committees dive into it, the risk is that you get the facts wrong. We've already had statements by members of Congress that turned out to be incorrect. If congressional committees want to investigate this, then they have to understand that you don't primarily investigate by going in front of cameras and making charges. That's not an investigation. I think it would be appropriate for the committees to look into it, see what the facts are, and then comment on them.
Understood.
But right now, kind of have that backwards. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, it's okay. I just wanted to let our audience know we're watching Eric Holder walk into the Senate Judiciary Committee, where he will testify literally in just a few minutes in regard to Guantanamo. He may be asked about the Fort Hood hearing as well, although that is not the subject of the hearing. Jacob Weisberg, along with Lynn Sweet, also here. There's a broader issue beyond the investigation, which you wrote very effectively about on Slate over the past couple of days. I want to read for our audience an excerpt from it, and then I want you to elaborate on the risk that this president has, not from a failure to deal with banks, not from screwing up health care, not from having the wrong policy for escalation or de-escalation in Afghanistan, but because of a political vulnerability that is also a potential political strength, which is his relationship with Islam in public. You write the following. This is from Mr. Weisberg. America does not face a threat from the perversion of faith in general, and talking about, again, obviously, the role of religion in terrorist violence. America does not face a threat from the perversion of faith in general. We face a threat from the perversion of one faith in particular. The president needs to dip into his reservoir of goodwill to remind mainstream Muslims of their special responsibility. If militant Islamism is a distortion of their moderate beliefs, only their beliefs can defeat it. So regardless of how this investigation goes, I think you've got the nerve. If I'm the president of the United States and I'm this guy, I think this is his greatest vulnerability.
As you said, Dylan, it's both a vulnerability and an opportunity.
Right.
The vulnerability is, look, Democrats are always attacked by Republicans for being soft on the security issue, whether it's communism or terrorism. Add to that the fact that a lot of misinformed or biased people think Obama is a Muslim.
Sure.
There is a kind of risk that he is seen as soft on jihadism, on Islamic radicalism, on terrorism, however you want to put it. He has to look tough, and he's been trying to do that, I think. But he also has this opportunity, which is that he does understand Islam better than any president we've ever had. He does have Muslim heritage. He grew up partly in Indonesia, and he has tremendous reservoir of goodwill with Muslim Americans. He got 97% of the Muslim American vote. They will listen to him, and I think if he makes part of his point that you have to help defeat this virus within your community, I think he's going to get a response that George Bush could never have gotten.
Lynn Sweet, your thoughts on the opportunity and risk for this particular president on this particular issue?
He campaigned on this very point that Jacob is making, and it is time to deliver. He said that his very presence would change the way America looks and his unique that the world looks at America, and this is a time where he doesn't have to run from his own Muslim background, if that helps. Now, I don't mean Muslim, people don't get excited, that he's talking about his relatives. He has some capital to use here, but please, the Congress, of course, is going to look into this Fort Hood thing right away. It's hard to think that they wouldn't have jumped all over it, because they do have oversight, and they feel that the dots are not connected.
Last thing I'd like to talk about while I've got your representative is the Army itself, the suicide rate. You know how high it is, 2009 so far, 140 suicides. Stress on soldiers, 300,000 returning vets reporting PTSD, et cetera, et cetera. Smallest percentage in the history of our country are actively serving. Repeat soldiers, 5, 6, 7 times sent in. There's all the sort of so-called unconnected dots in the Hassan case. Is there do we need to dig deeper into how we're handling our military, period?
Well, I think we have clearly a PTSD and mental health problem. Now, I don't think that's what happened in the Hassan case, and linking the two, I think, is a mistake. But the statistics that you cited before that, clearly there's a PTSD problem. Now, in the VA HUD bill that we're, I think, about to pass in Congress, we set aside over $3 billion to specifically more aggressively look at PTSD. One of the ideas is to make sure that every member of our military returning from a combat zone goes through a mental health screening. And that you give them the type of support that they need. We have got to do a lot more in PTSD. The statistics that you cited are grim and very alarming, and it is a problem that we need to do more to address.
Jake, you get the last word.
Well, I think it's important to think about what the terrorist threat is, because it relates to the issue of closing Guantanamo and to trying Khalid Sheikh Mohammed in New York and a lot of other issues.
And the Holder testimony as we speak at Senate Judiciary.
It's not centralized al-Qaeda that's going to attack us again. There is potentially that risk, but people who follow this issue think that al-Qaeda as a centralized force is extremely unlikely to be effective or operational right now. The risk is from self-starters, from people like Nidal Hasan, who are inspired by jihadist rhetoric, who connect in whatever weird way with people in other places or maybe operate on their own. In a way, it is a much harder threat to fight because it can spring up anywhere. At the same time, it puts in perspective the idea that what we're facing is another massive attack on a trial or a prison.
But it also, again, draws a whole string of questions, which we won't get into right now, relating to our war in Afghanistan and the president's decisions as it pertains to that, and for that matter, the war in Iraq. Again, once you define the North Star on this one, which is we don't want to suffer a terrorist attack, we want to protect nuclear material, it becomes very clear which things may not be going in that direction and which things may, and we can argue about that. But the game of moving the North Star around seems to be problematic for everybody. Jake, a pleasure to have you.
Thank you,
Representative Smith, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it. Lynn, we'll talk to you in just a second.